Testing, 1, 2, 3.
All right, we'll get underway. My apologies for the late start this morning. I think we have a quorum. It looks like we have a quorum. So this is meeting number 54 of the Planning and Housing Committee. We acknowledge that Ottawa is located on the unceded and never surrendered territory of the Algonquin Anishinaabe Nation, whose culture and presence have nurtured and continue to nurture this land. Il est important de souligner que la ville d'Ottawa se trouve sur un territoire non cédé de la nation algonquine Anishinaabe, dont la culture et la présence ont enrichi et continuent d'enrichir ces terres. May I ask the clerk for a roll call, please?
Councillor Brockington. Councillor Curry.
Here.
Councillor Dudas.
I'm here.
Councillor Johnson. I see her. Councillor Kavanaugh. Present. Councillor Kelly.
Present.
Councillor Kitts.
Here.
Councillor Lowe.
Here.
Councillor Tierney.
Present.
Councillor Troster.
Here.
Vice Chair Gower.
Here.
Chair, you have quorum.
Thank you very much. This is a public meeting to consider the proposed comprehensive official plan and zoning bylaw amendments listed as item 4.3 and 4.4 on today's agenda. For the items just mentioned, only those specifically identified in the Planning Act who make oral submissions today or written submissions before the amendments are adopted may appeal the matter to the Ontario Land Tribunal. In addition, the applicant may appeal the matter to the Ontario Land Tribunal if Council does not adopt an amendment within 90 days of receipt of the application for a zoning bylaw amendment and 120 days for an official plan amendment. To submit written comments on these amendments prior to their consideration by City Council on October 8th, 2025, please email or call the committee or council coordinator. Are there any declarations of interest? None? Are the minutes of our meeting 53, September 17th, confirmed? Thank you. The first items are going to be a joint presentation on the vacant industrial and business park inventory, as well as the Greenfield residential land survey. For the zoning amendment at 1137 Ogilvie Road and 1111 Cummings Avenue, we have two public delegations, so we'll receive what I hope will be a brief presentation on that one. With respect to 1299 Richmond Road, I hadn't anticipated a presentation. We don't have any delegations, and I don't think there was any correspondence on it. Did members wish to have this item held? Let's see a presentation. Okay, Councillor Tierney is asking for a presentation on 1299. Yep. Item 4.5 is the on-site sign procedures for development applications update. We don't have delegations or correspondence. I hadn't anticipated a presentation. Do members wish to have this held for a presentation or questions? Nope. Is that item carried? Thank you. So we'll go back to the start of the agenda. And I would ask staff to give us a presentation on joint items 4.1 and 4.2, the vacant industrial and business park inventory, as well as the Greenfield residential land survey.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. As indicated, we have a double header for you this morning. Staff will be presenting on the vacant industrial and Greenfield inventories, and we'll be giving a brief overview of how that fits into our existing growth projections update. With me are members of the research and forecasting team. Starting from my left is Natalie Polsine, Maddie Harriman Fernandez, and Eva Wahalrod.
Good morning, Chair and Committee. So as Royce mentioned, this morning we'll be presenting on the mid-2024 reports for the vacant industrial land survey and the Greenfield residential land survey. Both of these reports use the current official plan projections and designations to monitor supply. As you all know, we'll be updating our official plan growth projections. So before we jump into the reports, I wanted to take this time to update committee on the official plan growth projections work plan. Next slide, please. As a reminder, it started in October 2024 when the new provincial planning statement came into effect. The new PPS included the use of Ministry of Finance population projections as the basis of official plan growth projections and the policy that private applications could be made for settlement area expansions outside of a comprehensive review. As a result, Council adopted a framework to consider settlement area expansion applications which included the use of current official plan projections as the basis of those applications, and the framework directed staff to begin the growth projections update in 2025. In June 2025, the official plan amendment to update growth projections began with a work plan report to joint PHC and ARAC and Council. In August 2025, the Ministry of Finance released the latest population projections for the City of Ottawa. The province also released the proposed updated projection methodology guideline for circulation that staff will review as a guideline for the growth update. Last month, staff completed consultations on the proposed PMG, and staff also met with the province and GOBA and other municipalities to discuss the PMG. Staff also consulted with GOBA on the preferred method of housing and employment projections that will be used in the growth update. This month, the comment submission closes on the proposed updated PMG, and staff will submit comments before the deadline of October 11th. And today, the mid-2024 Greenfield Residential Land Survey and the mid-2024 Vacant Industrial Land Survey are at Planning and Housing Committee, and they will form the basis of existing supply for our growth update. In November, the mid-2024 Rural Residential Land Survey will be at ARAC to be received, and throughout November, December, staff will hold consultations on housing and employment projections. Next slide, please. In January 2026, staff will bring forward recommendations for growth projections at joint PHC and ARAC and at Council. With the adoption of the growth projections, staff will begin work on the growth management strategy update, which will use the mid-2024 VILs, GRILs, and RILs as existing supply to determine whether additional settlement area land is required. In March 2026, staff will bring forward recommendations for updated growth management strategy to joint planning and ARAC, and then Council. And if required, staff will also bring forward a recommendation for settlement area expansion scoring criteria. For the remainder of 2026, if required, staff will consult with candidate landowners as needed and score candidate expansion parcels. In Q2 2027, staff will bring forward recommendation for updated growth projections, OPA to Joint Planning and Housing Committee in ARAC and at Council. And then if adopted by Council, it will then go to the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing for approval of the OPA. So that is the update of the growth projections OPA. I will now hand it over to my colleague Maddie, who will walk us through the mid-2024 reports on the Vacant Industrial Land Survey and the Greenfield Residential Land Survey.
So if I could, next slide. Thank you. Thanks, Natalie, and good morning, Chair and committee members. I'll start by going over the Vacant Industrial Land Survey mid-2024 update, which monitors the adequacy of supply and land consumption rates for employment lands. And this is the second assessment and monitoring of vacant industrial land in the City of Ottawa based on the current official plan, which was adopted by Council in November 2021. And the reporting period for this report is mid-year to mid-year from July 1st, 2022 to June 30th, 2024, and provides a vacant industrial land supply update as of July 1st, 2024. Next slide, please. So as of previous slide. Oh, yeah, thank you. So as of mid-2024, there was a total of 1,121.9 net hectares of vacant land available for development in the employment areas, with about 450 net hectares of industrial logistics land, about 400 net hectares of rural and industrial logistics land, 129 net hectares of vacant land in the mixed industrial designation, and about 142 net hectares on lands with either a village or other designation. So the industrial and logistics designation is applied mainly to lands where noxious uses that contribute to odor, light, and noise are clustered to protect surrounding uses. This designation primarily contains more traditional industrial uses such as warehousing, distribution, and construction. So whereas mixed industrial lands are generally lands that are transition from traditional industrial to less noxious uses such as wholesale, light industrial, and small scale office uses. As industrial and logistics and rural industrial and logistics designated lands have more industrial-based uses that correspond to employment areas as defined in the provincial planning statement and need protection, Only vacant industrial land contained in these two designations are included in the vacant industrial land supply. Next slide, please. So the supply of vacant industrial and logistics and vacant rural industrial and logistics designated land in business parks and industrial areas declined by 16.1 net hectares between mid-2023 and mid-2024. And when summarized by designation, industrial and logistics and rural industrial and logistics designated land comprised roughly 76% of the designated supply. And this map identifies the location of vacant designated industrial logistics and rural industrial logistics land by location in the city, with 415 net hectares located in the urban area and 400 net hectares in the rural area. Next slide, please. So the estimated consumption annually for industrial and logistics land is 9.8 net hectares, and for rural industrial logistics is 7.2 net hectares. So for the 22 years remaining for our planning horizon, the land required for those designations is 215.6 net hectares and 158.4 net hectares respectively. And our mid-2024 supply is sufficient to meet that demand and meets the requirements of the provincial planning statement. But as mentioned by Natalie earlier, staff will be developing a new growth management strategy for committee and council consideration in March 2026 that will identify the recommended industrial land need to accommodate updated employment projections. Next slide, please. So I'll now go over the Greenfield Residential Land Survey mid-2024 update. So the official plan divides Ottawa's urban area into two categories, a built-up area and greenfield area. This Greenfield Residential Land Survey monitors the residential land supply within the greenfield area. And the greenfield land supply is further separated into two categories. The designated and available greenfield supply, which consists of greenfield parcels that were already within the urban boundary before the adoption of the official plan, as well as parcels added to the urban boundary by council during the official plan process and that have started the secondary planning process. And then future neighborhoods, which consist of parcels that were added to the urban boundary by council during the official plan process in 2021 that have not yet started the secondary planning process. So this report updates the greenfield land supply to mid-2024 and uses current official plan projections until council adopts the new housing projections, and new housing projections are currently being developed for January 2026. Next slide, please. So this is a map showing the designated and available supply as of July 1st, 2024 in dark green, future neighborhood parcels that have started the secondary planning process as of mid-year 2025 in pink, and future neighborhood parcels that have not yet started the secondary planning process are hatched in pink. Together, these parcels make up the total potential residential land supply. Next slide, please. So to update the designated and available greenfield supply, we started with the supply as of the last mid-2023 report update of 1,358 net hectares. Land was then removed from new greenfield housing starts over the next 12-month period from July 1st, 2023 to June 30th, 2024. The remaining land supply was then recalculated based on proposed development applications, updated parcel data, and aerial imagery. And lastly, future neighborhoods that have started their secondary plan process by June 30th, 2024 were added to the supply to arrive at a designated and available greenfield land supply of about 1,582 net hectares as of mid-2024, which has an estimated potential for 69,736 dwellings. And of this supply, about 620 net hectares are draft approved or registered parcels with servicing capacity. Next slide, please. So the provincial planning statement requires a minimum 15-year supply of designated and available residential land to be maintained at all times, of which a 3-year supply needs to be registered or draft approved with servicing capacity. So based on current official plan growth projections, it is projected that we will need 47,859 greenfield dwellings over the next 59 years, which is an annual average of about 3,191 dwellings. and the average density by dwelling type over the past 5 years is used to calculate the annual average greenfield land requirement. And this projects a need for 84.5 net hectares of greenfield land per year, or 254 net hectares over the next 3 years, and about 1,268 net hectares of land over the next 15 years. Next slide, please. So with a designated and available greenfield supply of about 1,582 net hectares of greenfield land, we have sufficient supply to meet the projected demand of 1,268 net hectares with a surplus of 314 net hectares. Of this supply, 620 net hectares are registered or draft approved with servicing capacity, which is sufficient for over 7 years and is more than double the provincial requirement of 3 years of supply. Next slide, please. So as mentioned earlier, future neighborhood parcels were added to the urban area by council during the new official plan process in 2021. This added an additional 1,281 gross hectares of greenfield land. And unless specified within a concept plan or a development application, the assumed net residential portion of this land is 50%, with 36 units per hectare per official plan policy. However, it is anticipated that most of these lands will have higher densities than required in the official plan through efficiencies and more land dedicated to residential use. But as of this report, these future neighborhoods provide a potential 662.4 net hectares of land for residential development, or about 24,745 dwellings. So these future neighborhoods are added to the total greenfield supply once the secondary planning process begins. And as of mid-2025, an additional 633.3 gross hectares of future neighborhoods started the secondary plan process, which added another 338.6 net hectares to the mid-2024 designated and available greenfield supply to accommodate another 13,087 dwellings. So an additional, and further to that, an additional 28 hectares of future neighborhoods have not yet started their secondary planning process and have the potential to add at least 1,000 dwellings to a future survey. Next slide, please. So together with the mid-2024 designated and available greenfield supply, the additional 338.6 net hectares of future neighborhoods that have started the secondary planning process bring the total designated and available greenfield supply as of mid-2025 to 1,920.4 net hectares with a dwelling potential of 82,823 dwellings. And this provides a total projected greenfield supply of almost 25 years. Next slide, please. So to wrap it all up, based on current rates of development for the mid-2024 vacant industrial land survey, the city meets the requirements and satisfies the intent of the policy set out in the 2024 provincial planning statement. Should these development rates continue, there will be sufficient vacant industrial land in these areas to 2046, which is the end of the current planning horizon. And using current official plan projections, the existing designated and available greenfield supply exceeds the provincial planning statement's minimum 15-year land requirement. And future neighborhoods that are designated and available for greenfield supply as of mid-2025 add an additional 6 years of supply. Therefore, there is more than enough residential greenfield land supply to be able to accommodate any increase in greenfield demand until the official plan growth projections are updated. And as mentioned earlier, the official plan growth projections update based on Ministry of Finance population projections has started, and staff will bring forward an official plan amendment in the second quarter of 2027. So that concludes the presentation. Let us know if you have any questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. The math is clear. I see some hands up. I'm sorry, I'll just make sure I get the right screen. Councillor Kelly.
Thank you very much, Chair. And just based on what I just heard there, I just have one question. So would it be staff's opinion that based on the numbers we have and the amount of available green space we have or greenfield opportunities, that we would not need any further urban boundary expansions at this time?
So, Mr. Chair, in terms of the existing projections, staff agrees with that statement. However, with the development of the new projections, staff won't be able to comment on that until we're able to see how those population projections translate into housing and employment and compare against the inventories before you today.
Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Curry.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Okay, so I want to focus really on the business park inventory, and I did read this report when it first came out. So I want to make sure I'm right. So of the lands available, what I determined from the report was that 11% of the lands are publicly owned, and the breakdown of that 11% is that there's 47% federal, 40% municipal, and 13% provincial. But the other part of that is that 89% of those lands then are private. Do I actually have that correct before I start into my questions?
Through you, Chair, that's correct, Councillor.
Perfect. Okay, so understand that 11% are public, right? 89% are owned by private owners, right? And certainly in the Canada North Tech Park, that I see that is real. The challenge I have is how much power do you think as a city we have to coordinate some of the private owners of these lands so that they understand what we're trying to do as a city? And I'll just give you some examples as to why, right? So when you see the federal government announcing that they're going to spend 5% GDP on defense, 5%, right now we spend 1.5% on defense, so 3.5% increase in defense spending is actually $400 million a day in defense spending. $400 million a day. We currently spend 1.5, so that would be, that's an increase of 3.5%. So that's a lot of money, and there's a lot of interest in doing a number of things. Number one being getting a compound semiconductor industry and a fabrication plant in Ottawa. Obviously, there are other plans, but the other is to make sure we have more availability for lands for data storage. You know, of course, we need the energy to go with that, but that also requires some land. And then other defense industries that we'd like to make sure we have here in Ottawa. However, what I'm seeing is these industrial lands, 89% of them are owned by private owners. So now that I've said all that, my question is, how well do you think, or how can we as a city coordinate some of the private ownership so that some of these lands aren't sold to, you know, an amusement park or, you know, lands that are, or buildings that are very helpful, built by Nortel years ago on springs specifically for compound semiconductor industries needs, and then, you know, gutted for like a warehouse? How much do you think we have, we can do as a city on that front?
So, Mr. Chair, that might be more of a question for economic development. However, I think coordination would be limited with our federal partners and just the private market in general, just in terms of when a use or a business is looking to locate within Ottawa. Part of the issue is also the location of the vacant lands, and some of them might not be in the most attractive locations for some of the desired businesses as well.
Through the chair, just to build on that for Councillor Curry, I would say that federal lands in particular and federal spending here in Ottawa, but in any city, would also be treated a little bit differently. So in the same way that when the federal government makes a housing announcement, we look at what we can do outside the normal processes to facilitate that. If there was strong interest in federal investment in whether it's defense spending or other investment in our economy, we would do what it takes to support that outside of the processes if they don't move fast enough or don't create the obvious opportunities.
Okay, thank you for that. And would you say, when I give you the example of, so I tell you a lot of older Nortel buildings, not all in Canada North for sure, like there's some in Councillor Kavanaugh's ward, Councillor Hubley's ward, were built specifically on springs, as I said earlier, so that they can do the compound semiconductor fabrication. How well do you think we understand that as a city, where these buildings are very specially built, purpose-built, so that when an application comes in to say gut one of them and destroy that potential, that we would have something to say? Do you think we are knowledgeable about what these buildings were built for originally on these lands?
Chair, we would have access to that information, but we do not control the tenancy of buildings. And if somebody does have a building that is built on springs or is well suited to a particular use, we do not have a role in playing with respect to what that future tenancy is going to be outside of the zoning process. So if it's something that complies with zoning, it would be permitted to go into that building, whether it was also well suited for a particular use or not.
Okay, I think we'll have some further conversations on that because I think with our economic development goals, it might be helpful for us to have a little bit more intel, or at least to let landlords know on these lands, because you can think that a landlord would want a tenant that's going to be in there for the next 40 years. You know, they might have some incentive to do that as opposed to sell it to somebody that's going to be in there for 5 years on a 5-year lease or something, you know, and yet destroy the potential of the building. Anyway, okay, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Councillor Curry. Vice Chair Gower.
Thanks, Chair. I always look forward to this report, so thank you for bringing it to committee. On residential development, the report shows increasing trend. The trend is increasing in terms of units per hectare in all development, and I think it was last planning committee there was a approval of greenfield land in my ward with over 80 units per hectare. Which is quite a bit higher. Does staff see this as a continuing trend? Are we going to expect to see units per hectare continue to go up and up and up? And how's that going to affect calculations for greenfield supply going forward as we review the next official plan?
So, Chair, we have seen increases over time on the density. That particular file in Stittsville is a sharp increase. So one of the things we need to be cognizant of is just spikes and whether that's representative of all areas and throughout, you know, a longer planning period as well. We will look at the densities we want to plan for through our growth management strategy. So as Natalie had provided that timeline of the growth projections update, after January, between January and March in 2026, we will develop a growth management strategy. And that's when we will look at the densities and reviewing sort of the development patterns we've been seeing recent and in past, and bringing forward a recommendation on how we would plan for future expansion areas if we need them.
Okay. On industrial land, mixed use industrial, the report has a note that there's a lot of non-industrial uses being built in industrial, mixed use industrial zones, restaurants, hotels, car dealership, even a long-term care home. Is that a risk that too much mixed use industrial land is being consumed by what we wouldn't traditionally think of as industrial uses?
Through you, Chair. Yes, that is correct. We are seeing a lot of non-industrial development in mixed industrial because it does have a bit more flexibility. However, that's why we have the industrial logistics designation, which is more for hardcore, I guess, or traditional, so I should say, the traditional industrial and logistics land. So that's where that type of development we're hoping would occur in those types of designations.
Okay, so you're saying it's not a risk because there's still plenty
there's
of...
still plenty of industrial,
Okay.
plenty of industrial and logistics land available for more traditional industrial development to take place.
Okay, and then the other thing in the report is it notes that a couple of our business parks are either partially or entirely unserviced. Is there a timeline to service those? Is that planned as part of the infrastructure master plan?
I would have to consult with my colleagues in infrastructure, but I know that there are plans in place to service at a future time, but I'm not sure the exact timeline of those of that servicing.
Yeah, I guess and I can follow up with staff after, but is the timeline soon enough to ensure that we're still competitive in our ability to attract new employers, new high-value jobs, and so on? That's my question. So perhaps we could follow up offline.
I would have to look further into that to find out the exact timeline for the servicing of those business parks.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you very much, Vice Chair. Councillor Kitts.
Thank you much, Chair. Something that jumped out at me in the report was how many units in South Orleans are in the registered, draft approved, or pending stages, which means that they're ready to build now. And typically in the past, when we've talked about the Greenfield survey, I've said, we need infrastructure solutions. because of the performance of South Orleans. We're on the other side of the TMP now. So those solutions are now in the plan, but we need to get them funded. And there's going to be a gap between the solution coming to fruition and the building that is coming. And so I'm kind of pleading with everyone to realize that there's that gap and that we're going to be in a really tricky situation in the next 5 to 10 years in South Orleans before the solutions are constructed. And, you know, hopefully with future opportunities through the Building Faster Fund, I'm saying this needs to be top of mind. To Councillor Gower's point, Maribler and East Urban Community areas, which are in South Orleans, are overperforming on density compared to their community design plan targets. So we're over delivering. And I'm curious about the total potential units being at 13,000. I think, again, to Councillor Gower's point, I think that's low, because if I add up the total units for the 2 expansion areas that I have, known as E1 and E2, that's over 6,000 units. That's planned. So that would be almost half of the total units across the city, which I don't know if that's correct. But again, I think we're sort of lowballing the density in the report than what we're actually going to see built out. So I just wanted to make that comment. You can respond if you want, but it's not really a question. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, so E1 and E2 would not be included within the mid-2024 designated available greenfield land supply. So that could be why the unit count is lower than what you had anticipated. But those parcels should be coming online in the near future.
Okay, yeah, that'll make a big difference. So next year's greenfield survey is going to look much different if it's taking into account these expansion areas. I assume that there's other ones across the city that also are not in this point in time.
Yes, I believe that's correct. Thank you.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Turney.
Great. Thank you, Chair. I guess a couple of questions drawing off Councillor Clark Kelly's questioning. Would these targets, what data are we using? Are we using what the province wants us to use number-wise?
Chair, for the projections,
yeah.
So that is part of the official plan update. So that's not included in the current demand because we haven't figured out what the population to housing requirements are at this point. So right now we're using the existing official plan projections. We're also based on the province's projections from 2019.
Why are we just not using, I feel the province is probably doing a better job. I got to be frank with you, because we went through this argument in the past about projections. I have the highest number of applications for high rises right now. I got buckets of them. It's related to the constriction of the Greenbelt. We know that. A lot of people didn't want to expand. So now we're living the dream. So I want to make sure we're using the proper projections. And I see a much greater number in my area as well, which I think we've heard from a couple other people. So how are we going to solve this?
So Chair, we're undergoing that review right now. The issue with the provincial projections is only 1 of 3 provided by the province. It's just the population. So for example, the province doesn't tell us how many households or the type of dwellings any municipality can expect to see from those population projections, which means each municipality needs to go through an exercise to determine what those housing needs are. We're doing that right now. We anticipate to have that recommendation before committee and council in January 2026.
Wow. Okay. And we don't see any slippage on that, because the timing is kind of a little sus, because of course we're dealing with our draft plan, which is now out for public as of September 8th, dealing with a lot of things. It closes in December. We're open to public consultations. I'm dealing with an application today where we see lower parking numbers, all these things based on population projections, traffic. There's a lot of stuff. So is there a commitment? And Chair, you're really in touch with this file. Do we suspect that we'll have that population number resolved by January?
Chair, that is staff's targeting January for those dates in order to meet our timelines as noted for the March and growth management, the examination of expansion areas if we need to bring before committee and council in 2027.
It's a lot of slippage, but I guess that's where we're at. If there's any change, will we be informed as a committee that if those numbers change? Because we've been begging for these for a long time. I just want to make sure we're using the right numbers. Is that something that that you guys can take back and just simple email saying, you know what, we're seeing slippage?
Chair, staff can undertake to provide a memo to committee. I'm in your hands on how we would update them if there's going to be a slippage. I'm
sure the chair would be admittable to that. Great. The other thing I think we've noticed as well is application processing. We lost $37 million. All these things kind of tie together, even while we're talking about this aspect of things. Do we feel we'll have enough person power to be able to achieve what is required with all these targets that we have? Do we have enough human resources?
Chair, on there's different groups of staff that work on different things. And with respect to the official plan update, there is a small but mighty team, as there is with the zoning bylaw. And this, the zoning bylaw has been tracking effectively, due to the great efforts of those dedicated staff. Our expectation is that the same will happen with the official plan with respect to development processing. I think, I totally appreciate the significance of not getting the Building Faster Fund funding.
Yeah.
But this committee has approved thousands of units that have not yet been built. And that's the issue on Building Faster Fund, isn't our processing timelines. It is ultimately the housing starts.
Absolutely.
And, as measured by CMHC. And so there is a bit of a gap there.
Yeah, we are certainly playing catch up. And now, it's one thing that we're getting the rubber stamps lit up, but we're still having to make sure these things get built. So I think we have to have a real strategy. And if we're sharing pools of people from a human resources perspective between two different departments, in some respect, I want to make sure we have enough people to be able to do the stamping because I think we're a little behind. And I see the GM has her hand up as well.
To the chair, at this point, I don't think additional staff is the answer. I think what we are presenting later this afternoon at the Joint Committee is a series of staff recommended amendments, many of which relate to process and how we work across departments. I think we need to, as the auditors pointed out on the agreement side, there's part of the answer could be staffing, but part of the answer is trying to change what needs to go into agreement, sure, alternatives to the way the process works. So I think there's a lot of work that can be done in short order that we are looking at simultaneously with these official plan and zoning projects. So at this point, given the results from the last time council put extra staff into the budget, I think that would be premature, and we should see where council goes with the proposed recommendation staff are bringing forward and the results we could achieve. But as my memo to council outlining starts and data, we are tracking this extremely closely, and we understand the negative consequences of not getting infrastructure funding because we miss provincial or potentially federal targets. We are in an uncomfortable place looking at 2025, given where we are with the starts as of the end of August. And that is why we are proposing some recommended solutions to see if we can unlock the 19,000 projects that are at building permit, but not yet constructed that Director Moody was just speaking to.
Great, and thank you. And I just want to say thank you to the GM. I'd say welcome aboard, but I guess you're getting a little older hat now around here, which is great. And I have full faith in you. I look forward to this afternoon's presentation. I think we all just want to achieve the money from the province that other municipalities are getting. And I know you're the best person for the job. So thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Kavanaugh.
Thank you very much, Chair. This is kind of following what Councillor Tierney was saying, and I'm probably preempting the meeting this afternoon. But when I look at the Greenfield development, I think of all the approvals that have been given in my ward, literally thousands of units just in my ward, which makes sense because I've got 7 brand new transit stations coming in. But the fact that some of them have been sitting there for 5 and 6 years Is this putting pressure on us to approve more greenfield? That's my concern. And what can we do about it?
So Chair, generally speaking, approved dwellings and intensification is a little bit of a different market than what we'd see in greenfield. Typically, we would see apartments, condominiums through intensification, and then low rise in the greenfield area. You know, there could be some overlap for some of the, you know, the built forms that are larger, so larger 2 bedrooms apartment versus like a townhouse in a greenfield area. So yeah, the pressure there could conceivably go to the greenfield area. And the good news is that we have lots of options within our greenfield supply at all stages, whether it's registered or draft approved, in order to absorb some of that short-term increase if it comes through. At the same time, we also are seeing, just in terms of greenfield starts, there's less than we projected in the official plan. So if there's a slight change in that in the most recent year, we have enough supply to offset that and absorb that increase due to some of those stalled projects if there's any overlap with the greenfield supply.
Thank you, but I really do believe that people want to live centrally. They always look there and they're looking for larger units centrally. That's not what's being offered, and that's probably part of the issue. Developers are putting out smaller units in the intensification areas, but I think that's part of what's going to make the city better, is having all those varieties within the core. So anyway, we'll be talking about that more later, but I just that's my concern, is the pressure that it puts on when these things don't move, when these projects don't move forward. Thank you.
Do we have a delegate on this? Dr. McKenzie, is he online? Good. Dr. McKenzie, are you in the room? Yep. Okay. Colleagues, are these 2 items received?
Received.
Thank you very much. We can move on to item 4.3, 1137 Ogilvie Road and 1111 Cummings Avenue. There are 2 delegations on this. What I'll do is ask staff to give us hopefully a relatively brief presentation on this one. It is a fairly straightforward file. We'll get to our 2 public delegations. The applicants will make a brief presentation and be available for questions, and we can move into questions for staff. So with that, I'm in your hands.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, members of committee. Presentations on slide. Excellent. So I am here to present on the details of the proposed zoning bylaw amendment at 1137 and 1147 Ogilvie Road, as well as 1111 Cummings Avenue. The proposal, in short, is for 2 30-story mixed-use residential buildings with ground floor commercial and a private open public space providing a connection to Kensdale Park to the east. Next slide, please. An air photo of the site is shown on the slide. The proposed development is circled with a red line that's sort of hard to see. It's at the northeast corner of Ogilvie Road and the Cummings Avenue intersection. The lands are approximately 0.74 hectares in size. Surrounding lands to the east are Kensdale Municipal Park and Aviation Parkway. Residential uses surround to the north, west, and south. The Searville LRT station is approximately 700 meters to the south of this site. Next slide, please. On the slide is a street view from late 2024 of the proposed development. This was the former site of a Asian grocery store and restaurant, as well as another restaurant to the east. Both have since closed, and I understand the applicant is demolishing those structures now. Next slide, please. The subject lands are designated hub in the official plan, and they are located within the inner east lines 1 and 3 secondary plan, as shown on the slide. In the secondary plan, the lands are designated with a maximum height of 30 stories and have minimum density requirements to support the LRT station. Next slide, please. The site plan for the site is shown on the slide. The buildings will have 6-story podiums along Ogilvie Road, dropping to 4 stories at the rear of the site. Site access is consolidated to 1 access off of Cummings Road to the north. And that provides access to a centralized courtyard for pickup, drop-off, delivery, loading spaces, and the underground parking garage. You can see as well between the two buildings, the pop space with some landscaping, as well as the public connection to Kent Steele Park immediately adjacent to the east. Next slide, please. Here again is the landscape plan showing tree planting along the edges of the site, as well as within the private open public space. Next slide, please. Elevations for phase one, the first 30-story tower are shown on the slide. And then next slide, please. And these are phase two. These are less developed because the development is proceeding in a phased approach. So phase one, then phase two at a later time. Next slide, please. The schedules for the proposed zoning are provided on the screen. Referring to the key plan on the left, both areas are being rezoned to TD3 with the same site exceptions, except for area B, which is also being rezoned with a holding provision. This accounts for the fact that it will proceed in a phased development approach, but the holding provision will also require that the entire POP space is provided, the public connection is provided in the full course of time. The schedule on the right similarly does the same thing. It allocates where development can and cannot happen, and area B, kind of central and traveling east, is accounting for the POP space. Says no development can happen there, and it ensures that the city receives it, and the public receives it in the full course of time. So in sum, planning staff are the opinion the proposed zoning bylaw amendment is consistent with planning policy and recommend that it be approved. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We will, before we have an opportunity to speak with the staff, go to public delegations. Roxanne Babinska is in the audience. Okay. Could you help Ms. Babinska find the public delegate microphone, please? We'll bring you up to the table here with a microphone, and you can make your presentation to us. So Roxanne, whenever you're ready, you'll have 5 minutes to make a presentation to the committee.
Okay. Presentation is a big word. Just have a few words here. I'm francophone, so bear with me. It might not be correct in every way. I'm a resident at 101 Strathaven, and my house will be adjacent to this project, and I'll be very closely impacted by it. The staff has recognized that this area has not yet seen anything of that great density before. My great concern is that on this one corner, there's going to be a total of 6 high-rises. There's going to be, if this goes through, the new Luxo Palace with 3 high-rises of 36, 27, and 25-story new buildings on Cummings. And with this project, another total of 30-story buildings. So even though I'm not against any type of construction that would be close to a transit usage, and I'm not against progress at all, this doesn't seem to be motivated by any type of quality living, and also taking in account that affordability housing has been disqualified. I find that quite threatening, in fact, to any quality of life, especially for our little neighborhood. I find this project to be actually monstrous. It's going to be very impacting in traffic as well. This company has built a 10-story building already on Cummings, and there's been an incredible discomfort at using just coming into my house on Cummings. So this is not traffic, this is just the construction. And now if we take into consideration the construction of new buildings, that's going to be another summer of construction, and then the traffic of all these additional buildings. I'm not sure how the staff can be satisfied with the level of traffic that's going to be attached to these new constructions. Also, I'm preoccupied that people have not had the chance to react to this because the publicity is still of one 20 story building on the street. So what informs us on the street is that there's going to be only one 20 story building, and people don't actually walk there to see the actual proposal. So what the impression is that we're going to have a 20 story building there, and those photographs are still there. The other effect for our little houses there, because we're literally attached to this project, is the obstruction of light. So I'm not going to have any more sunlight in my living room if that Tower B is constructed. And I see that there's no specific reference to a shadow study other than there can be a shadow study. Well, I examined myself the shadow study going on my balcony, and a tower right beside my house just stops the access to my light in the living room. So the traffic and the sunlight is one main preoccupation for me as a direct resident beside this project. There's one thing that I wanted to consider is something that I've read, cash in lieu of parkland. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing this correctly, but I think this is something I would like to ask the city to consider, that this cash be actually related to the improvement of Steele Park directly and not just diluted into other parks of the city, because if this project comes through, then I would like to see a positive impact on our community. Right now, this park, which could be a jewel, is this my time? Is my time up? No. Then we would see a positive impact. This park is used not only by the residents around, it's also used by the Saint Laurent Community Center. They do summer camps there. People around come and drive to use the trails around the park. And in fact, the park right now is in a state of neglect. I think we should have a proper plate put to commemorate Steele Park. I think we would use a track and field track around the park. We have different clubs that use the soccer field. We can certainly use a proper boardwalk. It's basically rotting, which is a shame. The city has planted a few years ago a wonderful collection of trees, and I think we need a proper boardwalk. And I've seen also a proposal of linking the park to the aviation parkway, which would be absolutely fantastic.
I'm sorry, I have to ask you to wrap up.
Okay, well, direct improvement of the park would make this project a little bit more acceptable to the community. So that's basically.
Thank you for your comments, Councillor Tierney.
Great, thank you for coming out today. You're reading my mind. First of all, you can see, let's face it, the gas station's probably going to go one day as well. That's just the reality of the situation. That's why I'm concerned about the population targets, and you heard me raise that before. Is we see the Luxo across the street, 30 stories high, literally kitty corner. Traffic impacts, it's a very big concern. I guess the silver lining in this is, and again, the provincial statement's pretty clear about building homes and a need for intensification around transit stations. Your last point about community benefit and cash in lieu. I've spoken and I've been very pressed with staff and the applicant that we benefit Ken Steele Park in a big way. Oddly enough, there was a resident that used to live there before that was angry that kids were playing on the field. They wanted no whistles. I couldn't believe it. I don't think you're of the same mind. I think we want to see more engagement, entertainment. I'm working on splash pad, new walkways, things that we can take from this intensification and apply it back to the area. Is that satisfactory? Yeah, I've actually got commitments already on that. So is that something, at least if there's a silver lining, you could appreciate?
I think that would definitely be a good point. To me, the Tower B is just a monster. I think it should be lowered down instead of having two towers, to have it lowered down.
Yeah,
That
and
scale should be lowered down. I don't see why there should be such a monstrous project so close to residents.
yeah, and
This is
again, I
really-
think we highlighted the proximity to Cedarville Station. I will ask staff what options we would have, and I'll be frank with you, there's none. We see the Luxo on the other side of the street.
It's half empty. I don't know why we need such huge buildings in such a small area.
Yeah, and that's what we're saddled with. We decided to constrict our boundaries, so this is where we're at, and we're seeing that whole Cedarville neighborhood. I do have a question about the stone mount. When that went in, you had no objection to that. That was it's replacing all those industrial style pieces that are in the middle, a bearing shop, a sandblasting shop, all those things that were in there. The stone mount, no issue?
I'm thinking shops. They just closed Starbucks. What shops are actually going to survive here? We had a nice Chinese and Lebanese
that place.
restaurant.
It was
That
great.
that was real inclusive community life. You know?
I love that.
But the first project with a small building and local shops, that could have had some kind of. It's not monstrous.
Yeah.
It's something that could actually bring something to the community, but to have said, it's like a Titanic. It really is.
Yeah. So I don't think you like the Luxo literally across the street from you either at 32 stories. It's probably not fun either. Yeah. This is a new reality we're dealing with, but I certainly will be pressing for the community benefit for sure. Looking at the other
why
concerns.
two towers?
Yeah, again, that's what we have in front of us. And we all like to get out and wag our finger and say, we'll fight it. But the reality is not ask questions to staff.
Yeah.
If they go to the tribunal, they'll build it anyway.
It looks like disguised.
Sorry, it's devolving into a bit of back and forth at this point.
Absolutely, Chair. Thank
did you have
for
any
getting
further
involved.
questions? Oh, good. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for your
I'll talk to you,
presentation.
follow up with you later for sure. Thank you.
Richard Haniff is our second delegation. He is online, so we'll get him in here. Mr. Haniff, we see you. It doesn't look like your microphone is muted, but I think we're not hearing you. Maybe a matter of turning on your microphone. Oh, yeah. So what we'll do is I'll ask the applicants to come up while we sort out the audio with Mr. Haniff. Tyler and Lisa. Welcome, and whenever you're ready, you have 5 minutes to make a presentation to the committee.
Actually, if we could just jump right to slide 5, I believe staff did a pretty good job with the context and a bit of the policy. So, because this will also speak a bit to our last delegate as to their concerns and talking about the policy. So actually, sorry, could you go one slide back? All right, so as staff has already mentioned, I'll just reiterate that the site is located along a Main Street corridor as well as a hub with a particular protected roadway widening over 30, which would, as far as the official plan is concerned, allow for up to 40 stories. Of course, that's not what's on offer here, but that's just what the official plan's direction for this area would be. We could go to the next slide, please. And as identified in staff's report as well, if you see the subject property, again, is designated for 30 stories and a particular density of a minimum of 350 units per net hectare. And again, that is what we are proposing, just to simply get zoning aligned with the secondary plan policies. If you go to the next slide. We can go past design guidelines. Next slide, please. So looking at the site plan, with regards to concerns about transition to other properties, just to the north of the site is the secondary plan zones for, or designates for 6 stories to provide a transition from high rise to mid rise to low rise. And I should also note that as part of both the zoning schedule as well as identified on the site plan, that the transition between the interior lot line to the north and our towers exceeds 21 meters, which by the high rise bylaw would be the adequate separation distance between towers for privacy's sake. So again, we did our best to make sure that we could accommodate the towers as close to Ogilvy as possible within the structural constraints of the buildings. Next slide, please. And again, looking at tower separation, as I noted, using the angular plane at staff's request, we provided this in our UDRP package to identify that we are doing our best to locate the tower as close to Ogilvy and as far away from the low-rise residential as possible. Next slide, please. And again, much to the last delegate and Councillor Tierney's remark, this particular node of Cummings and Ogilvy is designed here. As you can see, these are what has been built and what is projected to be built based on the secondary plan. And again, you can see that this is aligned with what is identified in the secondary plan for heights, as well as just to the north and west of the site, you can see that it is projected to be 6 stories in height to provide that adequate transition from the high rise to the low rise. Next slide. And finally, to wrap up, this is a more stylized landscape plan than what staff had presented, just to identify the full tree canopy that's anticipated on site once we've reached its full extent, as well as identifying that in addition to cash in lieu, which I hope Councillor Tierney will spend on a great new skate park, as well as providing that land in that L-shaped corner between the 2 buildings for a POPs, which of course, by definition, is fully accessible to the broader public at all time. So if you have any further questions, happy to answer.
Thank you very much for the comments. Councillor Tierney.
Yeah, I'll keep it brief. Thank you for all the forestry around there. I think you guys are moving quick in the community, and obviously that creates concern, but that whole corner intersection, the Luxo on the other side, you guys are doing that one property. On the other side, there's multiple buildings going in as well. So you can hear the concern about traffic and all those things and parking. So I think we're going to have to continue to work on that. But just to the last point, the cash in lieu, we've had a pretty good discussion about that. I want to see community benefit. I want to see things that are going to happen from that perspective. And you guys have committed, you don't have to get into project specific until we get to that point and the money is in the bank, but you guys have fully committed to improving the neighboring park and the neighboring community around the area, correct?
Yep, absolutely. And as we work through our first phase of site plan, that will continue to go through. So with more public and more talk with staff about what that cash will go to and what it'll look like.
Great. And are you guys, since you've moved so quick, you're not going to buy the gas station next, are you? Because I've got to prep for that one. That's who knows, right?
Can't exactly speak to that, sorry.
Well, I'll leave it at that, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Tierney. Mr. Haniff, can you try saying something to see whether we have your audio or not? Oh, and I'm sorry for the app. We don't have any further questions from members. Sorry. Thank you for the presentation. Okay, I'm not hearing Mr. Haniff, so I'm sorry, Mr. Haniff. Technical difficulties mean you won't be able to present today. I did read your submission this morning. It's available on the SharePoint site for those who wish to refer to it, particularly before this matter rises to council in a week or so. And so with sorry, does anyone have any questions to staff? Sure, Councillor Tierney.
Great. We've gone through this multiple, usually I have Tim Mark here, but nonetheless, it doesn't really matter. I think we've gone through this many times already. The province has made it very clear that whether it's the most recent bill, building more houses quickly, will have impacts on communities. If this went to a tribunal hearing, staff have recommended it, by the way, but if the staff were against it, what's the likelihood? Because we remember what happened when I tried to do that at Blair and Montreal Road, where staff were dead against it and we still lost. What's the likelihood of success on this if we were to reject it today?
Chair, I appreciate the question, and this is staff are recommending this proposal. So anytime a recommendation comes from staff, council will regard that and make its decision accordingly. Should this go to the tribunal, the recommendation obviously would be hiring outside planning staff to respond to the issue, because internal staff are recommending this proposal. And it's always a risk, as the councillors indicated, the legislation is designed and to move this type of building forward. And so it would be, I'm not a percentage person, but it would be a risk of a loss at the tribunal for sure.
Yeah, I know. I can dissent against something, but again, it would be kind of a joke because we know where it's going to go. So that's all I have, Chair. Thank you, and I'll be doing my best for the community and make sure as we see more development to keep investing in the local parks in the community as I've been doing so far to date. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Tierney. Is that Councillor Curry?
Yeah, I just have one question just to help clarify for the community. We've had this conversation many, many times about the right to sunlight, and I'm wondering if our city solicitor can make that comment. It's heartbreaking for people because they want the sunlight in their living room, but in terms of the law, our city solicitor may be able to clarify about the right to sunlight.
Chair, it's a consideration that's taken into the planning process, and that's what's the report that's before you. Other than that, there's no whether it constitutes good planning will be the determination that this body makes, or subsequently Ontario Land Tribunal. It's one variable, but as you can see, the report that's put forward has addressed those issues from a planning perspective.
Yeah, and what we often ask Tim Mark is, what the law says, and I believe there's some law that since 1800 and something, no one has the right to sunlight, and that's one of the challenge, because of the shadow studies we always have to contemplate. So it might be helpful for people to understand that. But anyways, these decisions are hard, but I'll be supporting this application.
Thank you very much, colleagues. I'm sorry. It looks like Mr. Haniff will be able to join us. We're going to try one more time.
Hi, good morning. Are you able to hear me?
We are able to hear you. Thank you. When you're ready, you have 5 minutes to make a presentation to the committee.
Great, thanks a lot. So just to note that, as you know, this development's right next to stable development, zoning R5 and TD1. Also to note, the shadow study, it's only looking at the June time period. It doesn't look at the other times of the year where the shadow actually impacts the existing neighborhood and would go further considering how high the towers are. So the shadow study just looks at one time of the year. The development is on the 600-meter radius to the transit station, which when you look at these transit-oriented development plans, that radius shows like how close it is to the transit station for development. It's also on the border of the secondary plan, of a big secondary plan that has a large area. Aside from that, based on City of Ottawa document named it doesn't actually have a name, but it's talking about transit-oriented development. There's a section 3.8 talking about zoning approach to density, and basically it's saying that the closer the development is to the transit station, the higher the building could be, and the further away from the station, the density of the building should be lower. So with this development, we're looking at the highest possible development on the secondary plan and on the radius of that 600-meter radius, that where people are more likely to walk to the station. Aside from that, the density for the hectarage of the site is only, I believe, I calculated it at 0.5 hectares, and I believe the presentation said about 0.7. So I mean, like for that type of density on that size of lot, it seems like a lot for that size. For the green space, putting that amount of development and pushing the trees to the side of the lot, the development, the site, will impact neighboring properties. There's no problem with putting trees, but if the development was a little bit more reasonably sized for that size of lot, there would be a better opportunity for the growth of the trees. You'll notice that other areas of secondary plans, when there's a property that's right next to low density properties, you'll see areas that are marked for TD2 versus TD3. So there seems to be a progression from low density to medium density to high density. Whereas here we have a proposal for the highest density possible right next to low density. Sorry, I'm just going through trees. And I agree with the other delegate. The second tower, addition to this, even the agenda item only identifies 2 lots that are being considered, where 1147 Ogilvie Road is their proposal for the second tower. So I'm not too sure that. I mean, like, it's just the agenda item shows the 2 addresses, 1111 and 1137. But not the fourth one, not the third one. So I'm just wondering if, the public has an opportunity to be fully aware of what this development entails. So in the end, my recommendation, like my suggestion is, when you look at other development zones and other reasonable developments, even the 2 towers at the Blair station, which are 150 meters away from the station itself, even those are just TD2s. So, I would recommend that the development team consider rezoning this in MC2, a TD1, a TM2, a TM3, or at most a TD2 to keep it as a reasonable development for that location, and considering the area, the size of the lot. That's pretty much it. Thank you.
Thank you. That's your 5 minutes. Hands up, I see Councillor Tierney.
Hi, Richard. Thank you very much. And I'm glad you know the nuts and bolts of this. I will ask questions to staff, and just it's very frustrating from some clarity. At Blair Station, the 2 towers that are currently there now, there's another 3 going on that one parcel. So you can imagine around TOD planning, transit-oriented development planning, between Blair and Searville, which really hasn't seen much. We're seeing massive amounts of intensification And that requires proper population projections, which I'm not sure if you heard the beginning part. I'm very concerned about, but thank you for speaking today. We also do have files on record, and Chair, since the delegation's gone after staff now, now I guess I have to get staff to respond. If I can ask staff to respond to Richard's question. Sorry, we got to go back to chair school, I think. Staff usually come at the end. Chair, can I go to staff and ask them to respond to Richard's question and cut Richard free today?
No, of course, if you'd like to
Thank you,
staff,
Richard. Thanks for coming in.
Sorry, go ahead.
Chair, it might be helpful if the councillor were to specify which of the delegation's comments he would like us to address.
Great. Well, I guess it was specific to the number of units that are on the site. So I guess the question is, what are they entitled to be able to build there? And do we have any ability to restrict how many towers are on that site? Because it is a good point, is what the current zoning is, what they want, and Richard's presented another option for zoning. What has the province basically said that they can build on that site? My understanding was 40 stories.
Chair, I'll ask staff to get into more detail with respect to specifics, but I would point that, you know, when we're assessing these zoning applications, it's incumbent on us to be bringing forward recommendations that are compliant with the official plan. And the proposal that's before you is compliant with the official plan. It's not, it's not the city's role necessarily to deviate or to enforce or things beyond what the official plan says. So with respect to what they're permitted to do as an application, ultimately a council will make a decision, and there's steps beyond that, as you're well aware. But it is important that staff bring forward recommendations that are compliant with the official plan. And in this case, we believe that this application is.
Great. And I guess the simple question is, it's not exceeding anything.
Mr. Chair, I would agree with that assessment.
Yeah, very frustrating. Okay, but at the same time, understandable. This is the decisions we've made as the council. So thank you very much for that today.
Thank you very much. I don't see any other hands up arising out of that out of order delegation. Members, is this item carried? Thank you. At 1299 Richmond Road, Kimberly, are you prepared to give the committee a brief presentation, please? We don't have any delegations on this file, but I know that Councillor Kavanaugh would like to ask the applicants some questions, so we'll bring the applicants up for those questions after the presentation.
Good morning, Mr. Chair and members of committee. My name is Kimberly Baldwin, and I am here before you today to present the staff recommendations for the zoning bylaw amendment at 1299 Richmond Road. Next slide, please. The site is located west of the Kitchissippi Parkway, south of the Ottawa River, and east of that triangle where Richmond Road and Carleen Avenue intersect. Specifically, the site is situated at the northeast corner of Richmond Road and Astley Roads in the Lincoln Heights community. The site is rectangular in shape and currently occupied by a two-story commercial plaza. Surrounded land uses include low-rise residential uses to the north, existing high-rise buildings to the east, and a mix of commercial uses along Richmond Road, generally to the west. Lincoln Fields Transit Station, which is currently under construction, so you can see on the screen here, is approximately 300 meters southeast of the subject site. In the official plan, the site lies within the inner urban transect and is designated as both a hub and a Main Street corridor. The applicable policies support the redevelopment of low-rise commercial plazas into mid to high density development that is oriented closer to the public streets. The site is also within the Lincoln Fields Protected Major Transit Station area, where new development must achieve at least 250 dwelling units per net hectare and should have a target of 10% large dwelling units. The subject property is designated Main Street Corridor in the Lincoln Fields secondary plan. The designation supports high-rise mixed-use development. The secondary plan also provides direction on tower floor plates and tower separation distances in an effort to mitigate microclimate impacts of new development within its surrounding context. This is a height schedule found within the Lincoln Fields secondary plan. As shown on the screen here, the plan supports high-rise development up to 30 stories on the subject property. And this is a site plan of the proposal showing the two towers proposed of 28 and 30 stories in height, connected by a 5-story podium with a 6-story atrium in the center of the site. There are 588 dwelling units proposed and 734 square meters of commercial space on the ground floor. Approximately 343 parking spaces are proposed, as well as 588 bicycle parking spaces. In terms of the zoning bylaw amendment, the proposed zoning bylaw amendment seeks to permit high-rise apartment building as a permitted use, to permit building heights up to 28 and 30 stories with site-specific building setbacks, to require 25-meter tower separation and maximum tower floor plates of 750 square meters as directed in the secondary plan. The zoning amendment also proposes to require 10% large dwelling units and to require one bicycle parking per unit as part of the proposal. Staff recommend approval of the application based on the following criteria, or the following rationale. The proposal aligns with the official plan and Lincoln Fields secondary plan policies, which permit high-rise development along Main Street corridors and within protected major transit station areas. The proposed 28 and 30-story building heights conform to the height limits contemplated in the Lincoln Fields secondary plan. The proposal will deliver 588 housing units and provide new commercial space in the area. And the proposal will help advance the evolution of 15-minute neighborhoods by providing high density and a mix of uses near a major transit station. Thank you. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. I know Councillor Kavanagh wants to ask the applicant some questions, so I'd invite the team up.
I can also ask staff a question. Got my hand up for that too, just briefly. Since they're there.
Do you have a preference, Councillor?
I'll ask them both questions.
Okay. Hello again. I doubt that there's anything that you could add to the staff presentation at this point. We have the planning rationale and a recommendation in front of us, but is there anything else that you wanted to add?
No, just happy to answer the councillor's questions.
Fantastic. Councillor Kavanagh?
Yeah, thank you very much. This is an area that has received a lot of attention. We also have a development on Regina Street not directly, but behind it. So there's quite an impact in the area. And so this concerns the community. When we met, my understanding was that there was going to be space in the main floor that was possible for usage for a community. And I just wanted to find out if that's still the case.
Through you, Chair, I would say that's, we're going through the site plan process right now, still ongoing. And through that process, we'd be happy to meet with you to discuss the potentials of that. I just say the potentials of that because this has been on ongoing file since I believe 2022. So we may have lost momentum on that particular item. And if we want to bring it up again and talk about it, we're happy to do that.
Yeah, I think that would help a lot if it is going to be commercial on the main floor. That's what it's designated, but there was discussion about some sort of space that would be open to use for the general public. And I just wanted to know if that was still the case, because that certainly would be a bonus for the community, since there is no immediate other space in the neighborhood for that beyond, I mean, Britannia Park is pretty far from there. But I just checking on that. But I just overall, are you willing to discuss with community members from the community association progress and such as construction and just general progress on the development?
Yeah, absolutely, Councillor. We're always happy to talk to both yourself, the public, and community associations.
Okay, thank you very much. I realize this is a lot of impact for this community, again, because they have another development around the corner, which is very, I guess this is what we expect when we have intensification near a station. This is all related to Lincoln Field. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Tyler. I don't see any further questions for you. Thank you very much for your appearance today. Councillor Kavanaugh, did you wish to pose the same question to staff, or are you satisfied at this point?
I just wanted to make the point that when we're looking at these individual applications, we need to look at the impact in the community of surrounding applications. And very recently, we had one on Regina, and at the tail end. And I just wanted to know, how do we take that into consideration, because it doubles the impact of traffic and other concerns.
Good morning, Mr. Chair. In response, I think in this particular area, we have the benefit of having a secondary plan that is less than a year old. So we do have that extra level of analysis that was already undertaken. So we do use that as that tool, and it actually did go through that process to understand those impacts. And I think for other sites, of course, we do look at what is coming. I always do reinforce that we do look at each application on its own merit, but of course we do look at the larger context. Thanks.
Thank you. And the other question is about the walkability. We measured the distance to the station, but if we're using NCC pathways as our measurement, this is an ongoing issue. They're not winter maintained right now. And this is something that the city's going to have to look into, because we can't say that that's how far it is to the station if we're not working with the NCC to make it all year round. Can I have some kind of commitment that that'll be taken into consideration?
Mr. Chair, through both this application and the application at Regina, that's certainly something we are looking at. I might defer to my my director, Mr. Moody, but I can confirm for sure we are meeting with the NCC and having those ongoing discussions, because we do recognize that this is an issue and it is critical to get residents on the north side of Richmond to Lincoln Field Station.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much, Councillor Kavanaugh. I don't see any other hands up. So members, is this item carried as recommended? Thank you. Approaching the end of our agenda, we have no in-camera items. We have one notice of motion. Councillor Kavanaugh.
Thank you. Whereas in the mid-2023 Greenfield Residential Land Survey received at the Planning and Housing Committee on February 5th, 2025 states staff estimate that this provides for a 24-year supply exceeding the 15-year supply requirement of the PPS and is more than sufficient to meet any potential increases in greenfield demand until the next official plan update, particularly when less greenfield development occurred than projected in the past 5 years. And whereas according to the same report, the intensification rate for this 5-year period represents 59%, whereas the official plan target at minimum of 42%. And whereas the city has acknowledged that it is in a financial crisis, and whereas the city has raised taxes and introduced service efficiencies as a result of this crisis, and whereas the city currently has a $3.8 billion deficit in maintenance and replacement of recreational and other buildings, whereas in September 2024, City Council unanimously endorsed the Fairness for Ottawa campaign started by the mayor, aimed at getting more provincial and federal help to cope with financial pressures, whereas the Infrastructure Master Plan estimates the cost of providing water and wastewater service to the Tewan community at approximately 591 million. Whereas these costs do not include other necessary capital expenditures such as transportation infrastructure and other city services, and whereas these costs also do not include associated maintenance, operational, life cycle costs that will be incurred over the lifetime of this infrastructure, whereas the province unilaterally expanded Ottawa's urban boundary in 2022, overriding the city's official plan. And whereas the Auditor General of Ontario and Integrity Commissioner raised concerns about improper developer influence in provincial land use decisions. And whereas public opposition and environmental concerns prompted the province to reverse the expansions in 2023, restoring municipal planning authority. And whereas staff noted in the new official plan growth management strategy report, document 3, that this vast area, the Teywin community, is not contiguous to existing economic clusters, so it would not have immediate synergistic relationships with the existing economic base of the city. And whereas staff advised the same report that due to the presence of sensitive marine clays, the Teywin community will likely face grade raising restrictions, meaning all housing would rely permanently on sump pumps on foundation drainage. And whereas during the urban boundary expansion discussions, staff did not previously consider the Teywin lands due to their distance from existing and planned rapid transit lines, and therefore never evaluated the Teywin area using the criteria adopted by council, including the 5 big moves. And whereas the decision to add the Teywin lands to the urban boundary was a decision made by council via amending motion at committee, whereas this precluded a public consultation process, including consultation with relevant Indigenous groups, and whereas the provincial policy statement 2020 provides guidelines for municipalities and planning authorities to consult all relevant Indigenous communities whose rights and interests or territories might be affected by planning and development decisions. And whereas the City of Ottawa requires consultation with Indigenous groups during the policy planning and development approval process. And whereas the official plan, reconciliation action plan, and the other municipal policies mandate that consultation is required when policy plans or development may affect Indigenous rights, interests, or lands, and this applies to all relevant Indigenous communities. Whereas the City of Ottawa did not appear to satisfy its duty to consult and accommodate under S35 of the Constitutional Act 1982 with the First Nations of Algonquin Anishinaabe Nation Tribal Council regarding the urban boundary expansion. Whereas the city's partner in Teywin, the Algonquins of Ontario, is not a First Nation recognized by the federal government under the Indian Act, but to quote Ontario's Superior Court, is an unincorporated entity which was created to negotiate with the Government of Ontario in Canada in the Algonquin-Ontario negotiations. And whereas the city faces the serious risk of litigation and liability from the First Nations of the Algonquin Anishinaabe Nation Tribal Council if it proceeds with the Teywin development, given that the city should be aware that it mistakenly consulted and accommodated the unincorporated Association of Algonquins of Ontario rather than the rights-holding First Nations of the Algonquin Anishinaabe Nation Tribal Council. Whereas Grand Chief Savannah McGregor of the Algonquin Anishinaabe Nation Tribal Council has expressed opposition to the Teywin development, stating, "We want to make it abundantly clear that just because a landowner whose realty corporation is partly owned by one Algonquin First Nation and self-identified Algonquin people does not qualify it as an act of reconciliation of the Algonquin Anishinaabe Nation. Therefore, be it resolved that staff in the policy planning branch of the Planning Department and Building Department be directed to initiate the official plan amendment to delete Category 2 Future Neighborhood Overlays New Teywin Community Lands from Schedule C17 to the official plan of the City of Ottawa. Be it further resolved that the official plan amendment also contain the necessary provisions to delete provisions elsewhere in the official plan that reference the Teywin community as Category 2 lands. And be it further resolved that the official plan amendment process initiated as a result of this motion include all the necessary process and public consultation to permit the amendment to be adopted by City Council. And be it further resolved that the planning staff provide the recommendations through the amendment and accompanying report as to how the residential and non-residential development that will no longer be in the proposed Haywin development can be provided for in the official plan. And be further resolved that the public meeting for the consideration of the official plan amendment be scheduled no later than the first quarter of 2026. And be further resolved that planning staff be directed to explore how land use planning could contribute to meaningful reconciliation in consultation with the Algonquin Anishinaabe Nation Tribal Council. Thank you. I think this was very appropriate to move this the day after the Truth and Reconciliation Day. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Kavanaugh. So we'll have that at our October 15th meeting. I've heard one concern from a member to make sure that the this motion and what is intended to do is distributed or made known to all of the different stakeholders who might have an interest in this. So I'm taking the nod from Ms. Wallace that that will be done. If there's any confusion as to who those stakeholders might be, please feel to ask your nearby councillor. Okay, I believe we also have an inquiry. Oh, sorry, are there any other notices of motion? No inquiries, Councillor Tierney?
Great, thank you very much. And I've spoken to Derek and Ms. Wallace about this already. With September 8th, now with the draft zoning bylaw out there, I think there's a lot of questions and concerns between now and when it's actually going to go to Joint Housing and Planning Committee and Agriculture and Rural Affairs on December 17th. Whereas there's pretty much the elimination of all R1. I live in R1 WW, by the way, and but I've had concerns about people in the Rothwell estate lots that are concerned about the R1As leaving and the N2s coming in. A lot of, I don't want to call it misinformation, but we need clarity. So what is the maximum height that an N2 designation, what would that afford? There's a lot of talk about 6 units and people are saying 6-story. I'm hoping maybe since it's time sensitive and it's so urgent, Mr. Chair, I'll just ask these, I'll read this. They can give a fulsome answer, but maybe you can quickly summarize just to put some people at ease that can a subdivision be simply built on a property in an N2? What's the height of an N2? And again, can any municipal official, knowing that the province has instituted this in a bill and we have to get this in place, can we overrule any of the provincial policies?
Chair, we're a creature of the province. Our official plan has to comply with provincial policy statements. The decisions that council makes have to comply with our official plan. The heights in the Rothwell Heights area in the N2 in the proposed zoning bylaw are 11 meters, which would equate to 3 stories.
Thank you.
Do you consider that that's adequate response, or do you want to still get a written response on the agenda some future committee meeting?
I believe a written will follow up. We had already discussed already, but this is the initial steps as we move closer to what the final date is. And I know it affects people like Teresa and myself, Alta Vista, Riley, a lot of areas in the city. So the more clarity we can provide, probably the better.
So we'll still get a written response to your inquiry.
If that's okay with that.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. I don't see any other inquiries. We have no other business. We are adjourned until our next meeting of October 15th, 2025. Thank you, everyone.